Hello, Mark here from Present Day Production, and today we present to you the ultimate 1176 compressor shootout. That's right, we've assembled a smorgasbord of hardware 1176 compressors, classic black-faced revision D&E models from the early 1970s, highly sought-after silver-faced revision H models from the mid-70s, the Purple Audio MC76 from the late 90s, Universal Audio's own reissue from the early 2000s, a Hairball Audio revision D kit version from 2013, as well as the modern day budget-friendly 76 KT from Klark Teknik. We'll not only be pitching the hardware versions against each other, but we'll also be slamming them face to face with their evil software plug-in counterparts, the Wave CLA 76 and the various revision versions, which is probably the most V's I've ever used in one sentence, of the Slate Digital FG116. So before we start, I'd like to say a huge thank you to FX Rentals in West London for their help in supplying us with all the vintage units for this review, as well as the 2000 reissue and the Purple Audio MC76. We're incredibly lucky to have a company like FX Rentals available. They've got every kind of conceivable bit of vintage gear you could possibly imagine. Their list of studio outboard gear is absolutely insane. So we're really lucky to have a company like that that can supply us with, at the end of the day, what is priceless equipment. So a huge thank you to FX Rentals for providing us with most of the hardware for this shootout. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Doug Hunt for lending us the Klark Teknik units, and also to Sam Russell for both building and loaning us the original Hairball Audio kit version. So, before we dive into the nitty-gritty, I'm going to waffle on a bit about the history of this Iconic compressor, where it came from, how it works, where it's best used, and why it became such a staple and valued component of studio racks around the world. Now, I'm aware that my waffle bores many of you, so if it does, then skip to the time coming up on the video now, and I won't be offended, honestly. I won't be offended. Back in the mid-20th century, a gentleman by the name of Bill Putnam made a bit of a name for himself in the recording studio world. The legendary engineer and equipment manufacturer Milton Taskar, or Bill Putnam, was also a talented songwriter, producer, studio designer and businessman, and his elevator pitch could simply read, "The father of modern recording." Born in February of 1920, Mr. Putnam, along with his friend Les Paul, who you may have heard of, was involved with the development of stereophonic recording techniques, and in 1947 made the first ever recording of a single artist singing more than one line, basically the invention of multitrack. Bill also founded several independent recording studios in Chicago, Las Vegas, Hollywood and San Francisco. He's also been credited with being the first person in the US to make use of artificial reverberation using echo chambers, develop the first US multiband equalizer, and with his companies Universal Audio and Universal Recording Electronics Industries, or UREI, went on to develop now classic valve or tube-based outboard compressors, the LA2A, 175 and 176. In 1966, Bill started making the transition from the old vacuum tubes to the newfangled solid-state technology with his Universal Audio branded preamps and compressors. Subsequently, he redesigned his successful 175 and 176 tube compressors based on the popular variable mu design using field effect transistors, or FETs, and thus was born the 1176. Billed in the 1968 release as a true peak limiter with all transistor circuitry and superior performance on all types of program material, the 1176's major selling point was its ultra-fast attack time, a mere 20 microseconds at its fastest setting. It also featured a much more contemporary design for the time, featuring knobs with clear surrounds rather than the more typical large Bakelite knobs of the era, push buttons for ratio and metering controls, a brushed aluminium face panel, and on the original models a sexy blue stripe around the VU meter. The original selling price of the unit in 1967 was $489. That's around $3,800 in today's money, or $2.47 if you're watching this after the coronavirus pandemic. One notable feature of the 1176, as with its Valve 176 predecessor, is that it has no threshold control. Threshold is controlled by the input level and is also dependent on the ratio selected. The hotter the input signal reaching the detection circuits and the higher the ratio setting, the greater the resulting compression. Other unique features for the time were the continuously variable attack and release, as well as switchable ratios of 4:1 and 8:1 for compression and 12:1 and 20:1 for limiting. Then of course there's the notorious all buttons in mode, whereby all the ratio buttons are pushed in simultaneously. In this mode, the bias points change all over the circuit, and as a result, the attack and release times change. This change and the compression curve that results is the main contributor to the all buttons in sound. Whereas a ratio of 4:1 yields a gentle compression slope, all buttons in yields a severe plateau rather than a slope. Distortion is increased, particularly in the low end, and these elements, combined with the resulting time lag in response to initial transients, can create an explosive drum sound on room mics, incredibly grungy bass, or a squeezed vocal that sits right in your face. In fact, the 1176 with its super fast attack time can flatten the curve so effectively and so quickly, I'm surprised Trump didn't suggest using them to combat COVID-19 rather than suggesting swallowing a flashlight or injecting yourself with bleach. Oops. So what are the main uses in the studio for the 1176? Well, Bruce Swedian famously used an 1176 on all the Michael Jackson vocals he recorded, but this compressor works fabulously well on just about any other instrument in a contemporary style that you could think of. Whether it's exploding snares, hot guitars, driving bass, or pumping room mics, the 1176 really has it all. It's my go-to compressor for virtually any instrument, for both lead and background vocals. But it's not just the compression itself that gives the 1176 such distinctive character. The amplifiers and transformers alone impart a desirable hot quality. Most 1176 lovers agree that it's one of those units where what comes out just sounds better than what went in, even with no compression applied. There's a certain brightness, a presence, an energy imparted to the audio passing through. That analog sound. By turning the attack knob fully counterclockwise to the off position, the unit can be used as a straight line amplifier, utilising the input and output transformers that form such an integral part of the glory of the 1176 sound. The unit actually offers a massive 45 dB of gain. That's as much gain as some mic preamps and far more than most hardware compressors. There were many design revisions over the years. The initial units released in 1967 were A's, followed by AB revisions with improved stability only 4 months later, and B revisions in 1968. The revision B models used a bipolar transistor instead of a FET in the preamp stage. Revision AB models are easily spotted by their brushed aluminium silver face panels with distinctive blue stripe around the VU meter, and revision C units trotted out of the factory in 1970 with their now familiar all black front panel and were badged 1176 LN. The LN denoting low noise after, unsurprisingly, a noise lowering, linearity increasing redesign by the father of the wah pedal, Brad Plunkett. Revision D, manufactured from 1970 to 1973, featured a change in the design of the low noise circuit, switching from the separate epoxy encapsulated module of the C to accommodating the LN circuitry on the main board, and these are widely regarded as the best sounding units by 1176 aficionados, although of course aging components and the differing calibrations of older units can dramatically impact the sound, regardless of the revision. E's introduced a voltage switch to accommodate European power lines. Revision F changed the output amplifier from its original Class A design to a Class AB push-pull configuration, and the G saw the final major changes to the circuitry, the input transformer being replaced with a differential op-amp stage. Revision H saw another cosmetic change, the unit's now going back to a silver front panel, this time with a blue URI badge and a red off switch below the ratio controls, and finally the year 2000 reissue sees a reproduction of the original black-faced 1176 LN, with Universal Audio having been relaunched by the son of Bill Putnam Sr., Bill Putnam Jr. So that's a little bit of the history of these classic units. Let's get into some audio going through them.
Every word a smile behind my eyes.
So we're still in lockdown and having to practice social distancing in the UK, so we can't just do what we'd normally do and get a band in the studio and record everyone. So we've assembled a remote supergroup of fantastic musicians who have all recorded a track specifically for this Shootout video. So that means we can do a whole mix and you can hear the cumulative effect of each compressor on each different instrument. So to kick it off, we've got from Young Gun Silver Fox and Mama's Gun, one of my favourite singers and certainly one of my favourite songwriters of all time, the incredibly talented Andy Platt on vocals. Also from Mama's Gun, a superb drummer, Chris Boot on drums. We've got a top session bass player who we've done a ton of work with in the past, Andrew Blowers on bass. And then a couple of up and coming young cats. We've got the wonderful James Maltby on guitar, and a young pianist who's rapidly becoming the go-to Rhodes guy in the UK, Michael Horner on Fender Rhodes piano. So a huge thank you to these guys for taking time in their lockdown schedules to perform on this track for us. They've done a superb job. They're all fantastic musicians, just really high caliber musicians. So if you want these guys playing on your tracks, then we'll leave everyone's link in the description below. So you'll be able to get in touch with all of them. They're fantastic musicians and all really lovely guys as well. So thank you guys for doing this for us. So how we actually went about performing the Shootout was the subject of much debate and many phone calls, and in the end we decided to go through each individual audio file through each individual compressor at 3 different settings, so as we can really get a flavour for what they're doing. A real world setting, one where the compression is bypassed and we're just hearing the analog amplification stages of the compressors, and then a more extreme all buttons in kind of slammed setting, which we've renamed windscreen wiper mode, because if your meters on your 1176 don't look like windscreen wipers, then you're probably doing it wrong. So let's start off with the first little Shootout. Now it goes without saying that you should listen to this on headphones, a decent pair of headphones, or decent studio monitors, and not on the tiny little speaker in your phone or the tiny little speakers on your laptop. So plug a pair of headphones in, listen on speakers. We haven't included all of the files in the Shootout for the video because it would go on forever and ever and ever, so we've tried to keep it fairly short, but all the audio files are available for you to download from our website at presentdayproduction.com/1176. So you can download all of the audio files completely free. You don't have to sign up for anything, drag them into your DAW and have a play around yourself. So first up, we've got the full mix. Now this isn't the full mix going through each compressor, it's each individual element of the mix going through each compressor. So we've set the with compressor number 1, we've set to a setting suitable for the kick, and then a setting suitable for the snare, and then a setting suitable for the bass and the guitar, and stack those up so you get the cumulative effect. So it's each individual element of the mix going through one particular type of compressor, and that compressor will come up on the screen when it's playing. So we've got a bar of each, so it's not too long, so you can kind of get an idea for the different flavors fairly quickly. So here we go with the first part, which is all the elements going through each compressor and then mixed at the end. So the differences, as you can hear there, are quite subtle. We know that many of you are fairly new to recording and mixing and the whole kind of production thing. And you might be thinking, well, I can't really hear much of a difference between any of them. And you'd be right, the differences are very subtle. So let's go on to the individual instruments and we'll look at the bass drum first off, and let's hear that at the setting that we used it in the mix. So this is kind of a real world setting for the bass drum. So we're starting to hear the differences a little bit more clearly there. Let's hear what just the amplification stages of the compressors are doing. So this is with the compressor bypassed, just using the input stage, which we've driven pretty hard, in some cases as hard as it'll go, with the output stage turned down, so we can just get a flavour of the kind of amplification stage of the units. Now in these particular examples we couldn't include either the Klark Teknik unit or the Slate plugin because you can't bypass the compression in those and just have the analog amplification stage, or in the case of the plugin, the simulation of the analog amplification stage, whereas in the Waves plugin and all the other hardware units you can. On the hardware units you click the attack down until it clicks off, and on the CLA 76 there's a compression off button which just gives you the effect of the amplifiers. So let's have a listen to the bass drum through the compressors with the compression bypassed but driven pretty hard. So there, at that more extreme and completely unmusical setting, we can really hear the different flavours of each compressor kind of come to the fore. My favourite out of the lot is the Silverface there, because it's doing something nice to the bass end. For starters, it's increasing the bass end, and we levelled this by ear, so I used the meters to level it initially, but the apparent volume differences between each compressor were quite radical, to be honest, particularly with the Silverface. So the Silverface is actually turned down by about 6 dB, but to me still sounds louder than the others. It's, you know, I really had to drop that down. So that's one of the nice effects that a good piece of analog equipment can have on an instrument in your mix. You can make things seem louder without them actually being louder, if that makes sense. And indeed, the Silverface are the most popular of the FX rentals units. They're quite often rented by people like the BBC for outside broadcast work. So festivals like Glastonbury and stuff like that, they'll hire out racks of Silverface 1176s and put all the band, you know, through those compressors to control the level on the way in, because a live situation like that, you can't ask everyone to do another take because you're clipping your converters at Glastonbury, so you have to get your levels right on the way in and mix it live. You know, it's an outside broadcast, so they still use racks of hardware compressors for that, and it's the Silverface that are the most common, and because I think that's it's kind of adding some depth, it's adding some punch, it's adding some bass, it's doing something really nice to the sound. Anyway, that's just my opinion, and it's not my opinion that matters, it's your opinion that matters, so download the audio files yourself and have a listen. But let's move on to windscreen wiper mode now on the bass drum. So this is the bass drum, all buttons in. So again, we can hear the differences quite clearly there. The different flavors of each compressor are really starting to come through. So let's repeat that, but with the snare. So first up, we've got the snare as it was used in the mix. And now the snare with the compression bypassed, again excluding the Klark Teknik and the slate. And finally the snare in windscreen wiper mode, all buttons in. So again, the difference is more apparent at the more extreme settings. So let's move on to bass guitar. Now with the bass guitar, there's an extra compressor thrown into the mix because Andrew has a wonderful sounding Klark 76, which is an 1176 in a pedal, basically. So I was like, great, let's put that in as well. So Andrew sent us 2 versions of his take, one just clean and one through the Klark 76. So we've thrown this into the mix as well. So this is the bass guitar as it was used in the mix. So next up, sometimes you want a really grungy bass sound, and we already know what the Silverface in particular can do to the low end of an instrument. So let's really crank the input and turn down the output so we're driving that amplifier stage of the compressors, and let's hear the bass guitar through all the compressors minus the slate and the Klark Teknik with the compression bypassed. So there again, quite extreme and not particularly musical setting, but it gives you a flavour for the analog stage of each unit. So finally, let's go for windscreen wiper mode, all buttons in on the bass guitar. So next up we've got guitar. Let's hear the guitar through each compressor as it was used in the mix. And now we're going to skip to all buttons in mode, because the guitar, the picked guitar in the amplification only stage sounded great, but when James starts playing the chords, then it just started to distort and turn into a bit of a mush, as you'd kind of expect, because there's a lot more harmonics in the kind of sustained chords. Those audio files are available to download from the website, but in order to keep the video down a little bit, let's skip straight onto all buttons in mode. And the same with the Rhodes. So first off, we'll hear the Rhodes in the mix, and then we'll hear the Rhodes at all buttons in. And finally, Andy's lead vocal. Now, Andy also sent me a track. He tracked sending to a Fostex Spring Reverb. So that's in the original mix that you heard, but here we've just gone for the dry vocal. So again, we've missed out the middle section with this one. So we've got the vocal going through the compressor as it was used in the mix. And you've probably noticed by now, you can see the settings that we had on each compressor when it comes up on the screen. So this is the vocal dry through each compressor as it was used in the mix.
Words come easy, tumbling from my lips in delight, bright and breezy, every word a smile behind my eyes. You light a fire in my mind, oh, I never get tired, talking about you, oh, no, talking about you.
And finally, the lead vocal, all buttons in mode.
Words come easy, tumbling from my lips in delight, bright and breezy, every word a smile behind my eyes. You light a fire in my mind, oh, I never get tired, talking about you, Oh, no, no, no. Talking about you.
So, in conclusion, this is the part of the video where you're probably expecting me to impart my judgment and give my opinion, and I'm not going to. Suffice to say that I've got my own favourite units, and they vary from instrument to instrument. So I've got a favourite compressor for drums, I've got a favourite for bass, a favourite for vocals, and they're all different. So I'll leave any judgment up to you. Once again, please download the audio files and have a play around in your own DAW. They're all available from presentdayproduction.com/1176, completely free of charge. You don't have to sign up for anything. They're just available to download for all. And a huge thanks once more to everyone that has made this video possible. It's been a mammoth task and quite possibly the most complicated video we've ever done here. I think we spent a week shooting it, and we've spent a week kind of editing it and putting it all together. So a huge thank you to everyone who's made it possible. First and foremost, FX Rentals for having all this wonderful vintage equipment available to people like us, and for having such a fantastic kit list available to the audio world. So huge thank you to Roger and to Jacek, apologies if I pronounced your name wrong, from FX Rentals for their valuable help in making this possible. A huge thank you to drummer Supremo and one of my greatest friends, Mark Claydon, for hooking me up with Roger in the first place. Without you, Mark, this wouldn't have happened, so thank you very much. Thanks again to our super band, Andy Platts on vocals, Andrew Blowers on bass, Chris Boot on drums, James Maltby on guitar, and Michael Horner on Rhodes. Nearly got the instruments and the names mixed up then. Links to everyone are in the description below, so please have a read through the description, and links to everyone there are all in the description. Thank you for watching, and I know it's been a bit of a long one. It always was going to be a bit of a long one. Hopefully it's been interesting. Hopefully you've been able to skip to the, if you don't want to hear the history, you've been able to skip to the bits that you do want to hear. So thanks very much for watching. We've got a Paultec EQ shootout coming up very soon. It's a bit shorter because we're only comparing 3 units, where we're comparing a original vintage Paultec EQ, again made available by the wonderful FX Rentals. We've got the Klark Teknik EQP KT unit, which is of the same kind of price as their 1176 compressor, i.e. around £200 in the UK, which is insane. And we'll also be comparing that with the Waves Paultec plugin as well. So watch out for that video coming very soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone that's taken part once again. Thanks to my partner in crime, James Nugent, for his editing skills and for putting up with my aesthetic diva-ishness with, no, that's wrong, let's do this, let's do that. Thanks to Jamie Pond for helping with the setup for some of the shots. It's been difficult with all the social distancing measures and stuff in place, but hopefully we got there. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Thanks again for watching. Please give us a thumbs up if you like it. Please give us a thumbs down if you don't, and please leave any comments below. It would be great to get a little conversation going and get to know what you thought was your favorite compressor. So leave that info in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll speak to you all very, very soon.